It seems like the internet is in consensus that iOS is better than Android at video recording, but is this really the case? I grabbed a small selection of the top smartphones right now, and I'm going to give you a definitive answer. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas and I make a lot of videos, over 250 in the last year, so video is pretty important to me. As you all know, smartphones have become pretty great at recording video in the last few years, with every important device able to shoot at least Ultra HD 4K video at 24p, sometimes going up to 120 FPS. So over the past month or so, I recorded footage with the OnePlus 12, the Galaxy S24, the Pixel 8 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. I've pulled all the clips and today we're going to take a look at them all side by side. Before we do though, there are several reasons to go with Android over iOS for video recording and vice versa. Firstly and most obviously, there is far more variety on Android, meaning you can find phones with larger sensors, different lens focal lengths and greater resolutions like 8K, Ultra HD 4K at up to 120 FPS, both specs that just straight up aren't available on the iPhone side. At the same time, those different makes and models will shoot with different characteristics, be it colours, contrast, dynamic range, highlight roll-off, motion handling, image stabilization. By virtue of Android running on more hardware, you have more choice when it comes to capturing the image that you want. But on the flip side of that argument though, the iPhone 15 Pro series with its ProRes log recording option, which we will delve into a little later, gives you the option to colour the footage the way you want with different LUTs or by grading the footage yourself. There are apps on the Android side that let you do this, but a lot of these are actually just flattening the already processed image, and given that no high-end Android smartphone has this feature natively, it's a big pull on the iOS side. The latest iPhones can also record straight to SSDs too, which, if you're a professional, can be pretty huge. But what about the footage? Well, I recorded in several different environments with different combinations of the phones just depending on which models I had on hand at the time, and recorded twice with the iPhone in log and in regular auto mode, and I also recorded a bit of video boost on the Pixel 8 Pro too. For the best results, I recommend you watch this on a computer monitor or a bigger TV just so you get the most accurate representation of each phone's set of footage. This is a typical piece to camera or A-roll set to emulate filming people at one times. The iPhone footage stands out as a bright image, especially my face, which has a lot of lifted shadows. I look far younger in that video versus the S24's footage, which I can assure you was shot only minutes after. The OnePlus's footage looks the softest but with the most natural blur in the background, and the Pixel 8 Pro sample looks the best balance with the cleanest overall footage, albeit with less detail compared to the iPhone. In log, the iPhone still exposes pretty bright with a little more contrast in my hoodie and with a more natural cross-scene exposure. I made this one-time scene deliberately awkward in terms of lighting, but all the phones actually handled this scenario pretty well. The S24 exposes the darkest, with the Pixel 8 Pro exposing the lightest and therefore with the most detail. The OnePlus and the iPhone footage is fairly similar, but the latter's white balance is more accurate, keeping things warmer. In the iPhone's log mode, it captures more detail in the shadows, so you can actually see more of the camera in this scene. Here's a low light, high contrast indoor scene shot at 5 times on the phones. The Pixel 8 Pro shoots by far the highest detailed, most balanced and accurate footage. The OnePlus clearly just didn't switch over to its long lens. The S24 not having a periscope telephoto really hurt it here. And the iPhone captures a warmer image which isn't indicative of real life, but it does retain the most shadow detail with regards to the acoustic blanket behind and the camera mount on the end of the rod. And in log, it exposes higher with more noise in the scene. This is simply a byproduct of shooting the log format. I would just stick to auto for this one. In this 5x shot of a windmill, the first thing you'll notice is that the OnePlus 12R and the Galaxy S24 don't deal with my handheld shooting as well as the other two do, and they are a little shaky. Secondly, the S24 is doing a remarkable job given it doesn't have a 5x telephoto. And thirdly, wow, phones are good at shooting video these days. The iPhone 15 Pro Max captures the most accurate white balance with a warmer looking overall scene, and it also captures a little more detail in the shadows compared to the Pixel 8 Pro. With the iPhone's log mode on, you can see more detail across the scene at a reduced contrast, which you then can of course add back in after the fact. In this 1x outdoor dynamic range test, all phones handled the scenario really well. The Pixel 8 Pro lifts the shadows the most to pull detail out of the rock, though the iPhone 15 Pro Max I think handles exposure the most naturally. The S24 shot is super sharp too, with good white balance, and the 12 shot is a little soft, keeping it feeling the most natural in terms of post-processing. In the iPhone's log mode, there is once again less dynamic range with a basic Rec 709 grade on it, but you can of course pull up the shadows crazily in post. In a test like this, Auto HDR is incredibly powerful though, so again, auto mode is really what to go for. This is a 1x panning shot outdoors, and the 12's footage stands out as exposing extremely bright compared to the other three, with less contrast. In person it wasn't this bright, so while I think the footage might look the nicest in the scene, it's the least accurate as it was by no means a sunny day at the time. The S24's highlight detail is clipping as it tries to expose for the dark trees. The iPhone 15 Pro Max balances exposure the best in my opinion, with the best highlight roll off in the clouds. And in log you'll see the iPhone is doing a lot of processing in its auto mode, as the natural shadows are a lot darker in log as they are in auto. Here are 5x shots of some people fishing. The iPhone 15 Pro Max once again balances exposure across the scene the best in my opinion, with the OnePlus 12's long range shooting coming in a little overly processed when it comes to artificial sharpening, and with the worst stabilization handheld. The Pixel 8 Pro's footage looks pretty solid, but not quite as good as the iPhone's, and with the iPhone in log you'll notice the digital sharpening is pretty heavy on the regular footage from every phone. Once again, log offers the ability to add this back in post or leave it as is for a more natural look. I decided to really stretch the legs of the cameras in this 5x super high contrast silhouette scene with the trees. The Galaxy S24 is really falling apart here with a distinct lack of detail, though I have to give it credit for doing as well as it has done. The iPhone 15 Pro Max balances exposure the best once again, with detail in the trees and the sky without cranking up the sharpening or denoising processing. The OnePlus 12's footage looks overly sharp with a lot of HDR blooming around the trees, and the Pixel 8 Pro struggles to lock exposure, instead trying to work out what to expose for. In fairness, this is a very difficult scene for a smartphone in auto mode. With the iPhone's log shooting though, you can really see how much processing it's doing in that auto mode, because the shadows are really dark in log. In this 5x shot of a boat in water, the Pixel 8 Pro is actually by far the clear winner over the iPhone 15 Pro Max, with more detail in the sea as well as the highlight detail on the boat itself. A surprising result given how well the iPhone has handled these scenarios so far, but great work from the Pixel. In this high contrast beach scene, you'll notice between the iPhone and the Pixel in their auto modes, the iPhone captures more dynamic range across the natural set of colours. Though when we switch over to log and video boost respectively, the Pixel really crunches up the image to give you an unnatural but also pretty impressive HDR, where the iPhone's footage looks more natural if a lot darker in its shadows. And if you want to bring up those details, you will need to do a bit of tweaking in post in the log mode. But I do think it deals with the clouds in a more natural way. I walked along this uneven terrain with 1x on all the phones, and the iPhone handled motion the smoothest, with the OnePlus coming in last. The S24 did a better job, but the Pixel 8 Pro was second place. In terms of detail, I think exposure balance is once again the best with the iPhone, but the S24 is pretty close in this regard, and the Pixel 8 Pro went pretty dark for this one. But as you see when we switch to the iPhone's log mode, the Pixel 8 Pro is actually the most accurate here, if not the most pleasing. Though in Video Boost, the Pixel 8 Pro's footage comes back as looking the brightest in the shadows at the expense of sharpness and clarity. You can of course plug in a USB-C microphone to any one of the Pixel 8 Pro, Galaxy S24, iPhone 15 Pro Max or OnePlus 12, enable it in the default camera app, and actually you can get a sound that is pretty good. I wouldn't say there's a particular way iPhone, iOS, Android, Galaxy, whatever, that really pulls you either way in terms of audio capture. I think every platform seems to pick up audio pretty well. However, once you finish recording your video with audio, Google's Audio Eraser is actually really useful for cutting out background noise. It's not something that I'd use all the time, but is an advantage to filming with a newer Pixel model over the other devices on the market. And audio is one of the most important parts of video production, so this feature is something to think about when making your purchasing decision. And speaking of making a decision, what's the verdict on this? Who's the winner? Well, if the iPhone didn't have the ability to shoot ProRes log, I'd say the Pixel 8 Pro and the iPhone 50 Pro Max are really neck and neck when it comes to recording video, especially when you include Video Boost, as that's a pretty powerful tool to have in itself. For your average person or smartphone enthusiast, it's really difficult to pick between these two. I did not realise how close it would be, but having that ProRes log option as a professional is an absolute game changer, as it offers that level of adjustability and tweakability that the current crop of Android phones just don't give you right now. So yeah, iOS wins it for this video, but it's way closer than you think. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content and never want to miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.